obviously, in the agenda I'll give you the results of the online voting in a couple of minutes, and also of the Smizer review of the year from highlights from Dougie, and the Smizer Club directors will give you a review of the year as well. And of course, we'll have Alan with the finance membership update. And Kenny Docherty will take us through our objectives and our review of that. And Colin Orr will give us the planning for fan ownership, which is probably everything that we're all really interested in at this moment. Then we'll have the question and answer session. And as I said, during that question and answer session, it'll be a lot easier if you send a private message to me in the chat with your question, and I'll bring you in. When I do bring you in, you unmute yourself at that point and you can ask your question. So basically all it is for me is to welcome you all to this. I hope you enjoy it. We'll try to be as quickly as we possibly can, because obviously there's other things happening tonight of vital importance to us all, which is taking on a wee bit of a different spin since yesterday's or the weekend results. So let's enjoy this. Let's get through this as quickly as we can, and let's go through all the detail, and hopefully you enjoy this and we can enjoy the rest of the evening as well. So at this stage, I would just like to tell you who was successful in this year's vote to be on the Smizer board. Graham McPherson was re-elected. Jim Cumming re-elected. Jeanette Swanson was re-elected, and we're welcoming Kenny Lang for the first time. Unfortunately, Colin never made it, but hopefully Colin can still continue some of the good work that he's been doing with us here in Smizer over the past few months. So at this stage, it's probably best for me just to get us move on and go to the review of the year, and probably ask Dougie if you can give us some of the highlights of the year.
Thanks very much, George. Hopefully everybody can hear me. So basically, just to start off with, and it's kind of following on from what George said, that although we've had a challenging year with the pandemic and whatnot, Smice have had a successful year, thanks to you guys and all the members for your continued support. And it's just my job to run through some of the highlights of the last year. Most notably, during the last year, we reached the amount required to purchase Gordon's remaining shares, which is around the £331,000 mark. And this transaction will be completed during the summer, and that will allow St Mirren to become fan owned. So again, that's down to your continued support, and hopefully that will go on beyond the summer. Also, as I'm sure you all know, the ground was renamed the Smisa Stadium for the season, which obviously helped increase our profile in the months leading up to fan ownership, obviously on St Mirren TV and that, obviously being referred to constantly as the Smisa Stadium. We welcomed John Needham onto the club board as a Smisa representative to replace David Nichol, who had obviously held the position for a number of years. And John has settled into his role, and John will be speaking to you shortly. We also had two very successful and well-attended Meet the Manager evenings. One was pre-season, and we had one in January. And a benefit of the pandemic was that it allowed us to do these two Meet the Manager evenings by Zoom, and members were able to join us from as far away as Bangladesh and California. So that's something that we're looking at, even perhaps if we get back to doing these things in person, that we might still provide some kind of facility for far-reaching members to join. And also, for the first time, Smisa members voted for next season's home and away kits from a choice of 4 each. So there's 4 home, 4 away to choose from. And the result of this very popular fan engagement activity will be revealed in conjunction with the new kit launch during the summer. You know how that works. It's at the end of the season or the beginning of the next season. Okay. And thanks to your continued support, the £2 spend was used to help the following projects, as you can see on your screen there. 14.8k was donated to the Youth Academy, which was a massive help in allowing them to continue operating during the difficult months of COVID. and Alan McManus has expressed his sincere thanks to all the members on more than one occasion. Any opportunity Alan gets, he does thank us for that, and your help in providing this support shouldn't be underestimated. 3.6k was also donated to the women's team, which allowed them to replace equipment and kits, and 3.4k allowed St Mirren TV to buy better equipment and a new camera in order to enhance your viewing pleasure on a match day. And then most recently, 6k is allowing much needed maintenance and upgrading to be done at the first team training centre at Ralston, a club project that Smisa is funding and Kibble are contributing to the labour costs. And 1.5k will be used to purchase a new panda costume, a popular club mascot on match days and for other club and community events around the town throughout the year. It's well used, and the one we have is well worn, so definitely needing a new one there. So that's your highlights of 2021, and I believe now I'm going to hand over to John and David to give you their directors' update for the year. So enjoy the rest of your evening, folks. Thanks for listening.
Thanks very much, Dougie. Hi, it's John Needham here. David and I are going to share this slide. So I'll talk to the first three bullets, and David will talk to the last three. And firstly, before I do that, I just want to thank everyone that voted for me to be able to take up this position last September. It's been an absolute honour and a pleasure, and I really appreciate the support. So it goes without saying it's been a challenging season for all of us, but I think actually the club has come through it pretty well, and I think you'll see that, you know, once the accounts are released in due course. And the reason for that, the principal reason for that, is the fantastic support that the club's had from particularly season ticket holders who bought their season tickets in really significant numbers, allowing us to maintain the budget and in fact actually invest a bit more in the first team squad. The live streaming, you know, out of adversity, I think we've now got a much better product on St Mirren TV than we had before, and I'm sure that the recruitment of Ali Defoy onto the club staff, which you'll have seen announced recently, will further improve that as we go forward. And I think we've had to contend with the SPFL trying to knock us off course as well. So delighted that we managed to win our appeal there. But there was a great deal of work had to go into that, and no inconsiderable bit of expense for the club as well. But I think we felt it was really important to defend our corner, and I think we were proven correct in that. On the park, it's been probably our most successful season since the 80s, even if we stopped now, but there's still opportunity ahead of us. You know, sitting there with 43 points at this point, I don't think that flatters us at all. And hopefully another trip to Hampden after tonight, fingers crossed. And then finally, on the recruitment side of things, I think one of the reasons we've been successful in the park is the recruitment that Jim, Tony and others have done. When you look at the quality of guys like McGrath, McCarthy, Jake Doyle-Hayes, Fraser and Tate, these guys are probably at a level above, I think, what we would have been able to recruit in numbers in previous seasons. And hopefully Quainer and Brophy will deliver too over the coming weeks and months. So I think we're in a strong position on the park, and I'll just hand over to David now to talk to the other three bullets.
Thanks, John. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, it's as John said, been a tough year, but we've weathered it quite well, I would say, up to now. In the background, we are continually striving to improve in all areas of everything we do. And John also touched on there, Ali Defoy joining the staff. It's going to give us a little bit of a boost in different areas and brand recognition and all the rest of it, and getting the name far and wide, and giving people more of an insight to St Mirren if they don't know about it already. We've been looking at different parts of the club that have unfortunately been quite heavily impacted by the pandemic. So we would have seen, you know, bit more money coming into the club, more visible changes. I think the ones that you've seen up to now, it's the tip of the iceberg. You know, there is a lot of work going on in the background, so there will be more changes coming. The club shop is one. I kind of watched when that was announced, some of the comments and reactions to that. I can categorically assure everyone it wasn't anything to do with Kibble that recognised that that opportunity, because when I came into the role in 2019, very early 2019, I did a review of everything that was going on at the club, how we went about our business, and it was definitely a gap that we had. There were always, you know, challenges with opening hours and all that kind of thing, and it was revenue that the club was badly missing out on. So you'll hear more about that as we go forward. The contract comes to an end very soon, so that will be changing hands and coming back under club ownership and operation. The future strategy, we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago where we're going to take the club over the next 5 years. Say, we've again, as John touched on, we're moving away from what used to be the norm for a few seasons, which was bringing in a lot of loan players. What we're doing now is adding value to the squad, so we're signing players, got them in 2 and 3 year contracts. Excuse me. So we're adding value to the squad all the time. On top of that, we are investing heavily in the academy to make sure Alan and the coaches there have got the tools they need to develop the young players. First of all, to you know, get them into the club early on. You know, bring them through the academy in this one way. These guys will then progress. There is going to be a defined pathway into the first team, and you know, as we've all seen, these guys are going to move on somewhere in their career. The value is going to be there. The value is going to be increased. So yeah, that's a kind of brief summary of where we are at the moment. And I'm sure there might be some questions coming up towards the end that we'll be happy to answer on that. I'll hand back to Alan, I think it is now.
Yes, it is. Thanks, David.
Okay.
Just before I start, I'm going to stop sharing this file. Apparently there's some red marks over the slides, so just give me a minute to see if bringing it back up will remove them. Yeah. Success. Okay. So hi everyone. Tonight I thought I'd take a couple of screenshots from our accounting and membership systems just to give you a flavour of some of what goes on in the background. And to start with here, this is the year-end accounts cash balance. And this just shows you that we have split your money across a number of different banks, which allows us to take advantage of the guaranteed protection that the FSCS gives up to £85,000 per bank. So we've spread it across a number of what you might call new challenger banks like Redwood Bank, United Trust and Charity Bank, all of whom deal mainly with charities and non-profit making or small enterprise companies, including some in Renfrewshire. So you could actually say that some of your money has been helping charities and small businesses in Renfrewshire whilst it's been sitting there waiting for the big day. They also all have slightly better interest rates than the big banks, but don't get carried away. It's still not a huge amount, but it's better than we were getting at the big bank. And whilst that's the position at the year end, we're forecasting that even after we've paid for the remaining shares, we'll still have about £140,000
cash reserve at that time, which isn't a bad starting position to be in. So thanks again to all of you for all your contributions over the years. The next slide is just to demonstrate that we have a fairly flat regular income. It's £15,000 a month, broadly speaking, apart from July, when a few people pay in their full year in one go. The only time when it falls below that is obviously when we've got some outgoings, that is no surprise that it coincides with the quarterly spend, because that's our biggest item of expenditure. A couple of exceptions in the last financial year were the nearly £8,000 of legal fees in connection with the Kibble shareholders agreement, and October when we pay the subscription for the membership system. And moving on to membership numbers, this is a chart which tracks all of the membership movement since 2016, when By the Buds was launched. Obviously, since the outbreak of COVID and all its ramifications, we've been a bit concerned that numbers might have been affected, but so far that doesn't seem to have been the case. Numbers have been fairly steady since 2019. It's only a small drop off since then. And in fact, in the last year, we're still attracting new members. Even though people are leaving, we're still able to attract new members at the same time. So COVID isn't stopping people from joining. And in fact, since the year end, the number in the accounts at November 20 was 1165, but since then we've actually increased to 1181, which is good news. The membership platform Very Connect also gives us information on membership demographics. These maps give you a breakdown of the geographic distribution of our members. Now, although it's not compulsory information when people register, over 800 of you have actually given us it. So it gives us a fairly good picture of the spread of members. As you can see, there's little splurges all over the map here. The red splurge, not surprisingly, is Paisley area, Renfrewshire, where the largest number of people reside. But the yellow blobs are up to 100 members in those locations, and the blue ones are up to 10 members in those locations. And you might see a few single green dots here and there. That's where there's one person. So it's all helpful in giving us a breakdown of the membership. And then just looking at the atlas as a whole, you can see, as Doug has already referred to, we've got some members in some exotic places around the world. And the current moves towards more online events can only benefit those people who don't reside in the local area. And finally, on demographics, so again, over 800 of you have given us their age when they registered on Very Connect, which does show that the vast majority of our membership is over 40 years of age, and there are very few members below the age of 30. This is obviously something that we need to address and that we are working on for the future. And finally, I just wanted to remind you all what we're all about, that the future club shareholdings, once July comes round, will look like this. Smizer will have a total of 97,155, which is made up of 5,000 that Smizer had managed to accumulate before By the Buds started. Then the 40,754 that we purchased in the first tranche from Gordon Scott in 2016, and then the remaining 43,000 or so that we're going to buy in the summer. And the total ownership of the club is then made up with Kibble's 52,000 that they purchased earlier, purchased last year from Gordon, and the other smaller shareholders totaling 41,000. So that's what it will look like, and Colin will be talking a bit further about what the future holds for Smizer based on that. But now I think I hand over to Kenny Doherty, who will be talking about benefits, about objectives, sorry. You there, Kenny?
Yeah, thanks for that, Alan. Good evening, everybody. I hope you can see me and hear me clearly. I'm just unmuted there. Well, first of all, have a look at the objectives that we set ourselves in 2020 to 2021. They changed a wee bit because we never actually foresaw that there was going to be COVID and the implications it was going to give the club. So that was quite a challenge, as I'm sure you all have lived through. But the first thing was basically to formalise the process for recruiting Smizer representatives to sit on board, because we're going to have more people on the board and we want to make sure that we have the right people with the right specs. And basically, we've done a whole person spec. That has been completed, and we recruited John Needham this year, last year, using that process. And John has been a very professional and proper person that we were looking for. So hopefully the process that we use will be successful going forward. Other one was to continue to develop the membership strategy. As Alan has just pointed out or shown you, there's an ongoing effort to continue to maintain our membership, and we've actually done that. It's slightly increased during the COVID, and we believe some of that might have been a part bounce due to the numbers of for the Kibble announcement and the early route that we've managed to get into fan ownership. That's encouraged a lot of people to actually, some of them to rejoin, and others to join that hadn't been members before. One other part was to help the club further reduce its carbon footprint. Well, that basically didn't get done at all this year, because part of the idea of all that was about encouraging people to go by public transport and trains, etc., and leave their cars to cut down CO2, etc. Well, as you know, there's no one into the stadium. There's no volunteers being allowed in the stadium. So that's something that we're going to look at a later date once we get back to what we think could be normal. And another part was produce a revised strategy for membership fees and benefits to be ready when Smisa secures the majority stake in the club. Basically, this is in progress, and there'll be more about it actually in our objectives going forward for 2021-22. Because again, there was issues again with that around COVID, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. With that in mind, Smisa is going to become the majority shareholder, and with all the uncertainty over the recovery from COVID-19, Smisa have decided to become focused on just 3 main objectives for next year. Rather than setting lots of objectives, the objectives we've decided it would be better to concentrate on known key issues. With this in mind, we've selected 3 key objectives which we believe will see Smizer come through the year in a very strong position. The first one is actually a date that we've kind of set out and got an informal agreement, but it's a written informal agreement with Gordon that he will complete the buyout of the shares by July 27, 2021. So July 27 this year is a big day for the club, for Smizer, and for us all. That's when we are going to concentrate on trying to get that deal over the line, and we don't see any reason why we can't. We're going to work closely with our partners, Kibble, and demonstrate to our members how the partnership has brought benefits to the club and the community. And basically, we want to come back to you by the next AGM with tangible benefits that our partnership has brought. But we'll talk about that maybe in a bit more detail with Colin. And last, we would like Smizer to become more inclusive and available to more supporters. And with that in mind, we're thinking of trying to introduce a £5 a month membership tier to attract more supporters who want to be part of the whole fan ownership. And we're looking to try and have that in place by July 27-21. Whether we can do that by that time, because there's quite a few hurdles to overcome, but that is what we're planning to do. So with that, I'll hand over to Colin and let you, Colin, take you over the future of fan ownership.
Thank you very much, Kenny. Much appreciated. So, as Kenny has said, this year is obviously going to be a historic one for Smizer and St Mirren. July the 27th is going to be our Independence Day. From that date, we will be the majority owners of our football club, and it will be in our hands to keep it forever in the hands of the people who will care for it most, which is of course you, the fans. That's been the culmination of many years of work. We thought it would take 10 years to buy the buds. It's actually happened in 5. That is down to the continued support of you as the members, as well as the opportunities afforded to us through our unique partnership with Kibble. We are incredibly proud to have delivered that, and every one of you should be too. So a lot of questions we appreciate there will be over how fan ownership will work. We created a page on our website earlier this year which lays out the key roles of each of the partners involved in the partnership, which we would refer you to. Very briefly, just looking at that, the single most important thing is that St Mirren continues to be a well-run business. So we would want to reiterate that fan-owned doesn't necessarily mean fan-run. Smizer will be the majority owners. That means we have a safeguard over the big issues around the club's structure and traditions, but we're not going to be running the club's day-to-day business. That's still going to be done by the professionals in the club's management and staff. The board of the club, of which we're going to appoint at least half, will oversee and direct that. So Smizer's role will be to put in place the people we judged best qualified to help run St Mirren, and we're fortunate that we've got 2 guys at the moment in John and David doing an excellent job in that regard, and that will rise to 4 as of the summer. So of course we will expect our board representatives to consider the views of our members and the wider fan base. Smizer's role will include capturing those views, and the members may be surveyed on certain issues where appropriate, but we would stress that when it comes to the business decisions, the club board will have the job of balancing the fan views with their knowledge of club operations, and we are going to trust those guys to do what they believe is in the best interest of St Mirren. Next section is around Smizer's role. So we spent quite a bit of time over the past year trying to firm up our definition of that, because we wanted to kind of bring a bit of clarity both to ourselves and to you guys. Starting point for that was the members survey we did in summer 2020, which we believe is one of the biggest listening exercises we think has been done with St Mirren fans. Very detailed survey. Thanks again goes to everybody who took part. Spent a lot of time analysing the results of that, and we've used them to create a mission, vision and role for Smizer, which you can see on screen just now. So the mission being to keep St Mirren fan-owned and at the heart of the local community, and our vision for the club is that it be respected throughout Scottish football as a financially stable, sustainably run club which competes at the top level, develops young players and engages its fan base and community, and hopefully wins the cup. In terms of Smizer's role, we have defined 5 points which come into that. So we will support the club to deliver on the vision above by safeguarding the ownership of St Mirren, helping ensure good governance of the business, investing in the club and its long-term future, ensuring your views are considered by the club, and helping the club to make a positive impact on the local community. And we've also identified 5 key values through which we as an organisation want to operate. So they are around being respectful in terms of how we deal with ourselves and others, trying to be as professional as we can in everything we do, being collaborative in terms of working with members, fans and our partners to benefit St Mirren. We aim to be inclusive, accessible, welcoming to all, and promote equality, and we will aim to act with integrity and honesty. So moving on to the next slide, we've done a lot of work around Smizer's operations. post-takeover, and we're going to try and tell you as much as we're able to at the moment, albeit some of this is still very much work in progress. As under membership fees, in future, we're still going to need an income, like any voluntary organisation. Smizer has running costs, and we also want to keep investing in the club. The more members they have, the more we're going to be able to do in that regard. However, we've also, as we've discussed, identified being inclusive as one of our values. We know that cost has been a barrier to people joining in the past, so as Kenny has already mentioned, we are looking into introducing a new membership tier at £5 a month, which would sit underneath the existing £12 and £25 tiers. Obviously, in terms of benefits, each membership tier will need a different offer. So as it stands, the £25 members get some added benefits. So what we are looking into doing is extending that to give some new benefits to the £12 a month members, with some even better ones for the £5 members. And it's possible that the £5 membership would likely be a basic one that wouldn't necessarily carry any other benefits. So we hope that would help us retain members and attract new ones who perhaps haven't joined up in the past. And maximise the number of people who are part of Smizer. So the new benefits package, that's still a work in progress, but we hope to be able to reveal details soon. And the other thing we're looking at is the potential for a junior membership category as well. So hoping to be able to open Smizer membership up to under 16s at some point in the future if we can too. And the last big question that we're sure people will have is how Smizer money will be spent once the shares are bought. So the survey, that showed that members do want to keep investing in the club. 89% of you said that you wanted to continue for Smizer's money to be used to benefit someone once we own the shares. Only 2% said they didn't, the rest were maybes. So we've looked at a few cash projections based on our likely income from the summer. We think Smizer will potentially have a six-figure annual sum after cost, which could be used as the members see fit. We've looked very closely at the members' feedback on where you want that money to go. One thing we'd stress is that other fan groups like the Foundation of Hearts and the Whale Society at Motherwell, their members just put their money straight into the club. They don't get any say on where it goes. Smizer's never operated that way, and we don't think that's the way we want to work in future either. So while things are still a work in progress at this stage and we can't really say too much, we are looking at finding a way that can hopefully balance sort of saving money for the future and investing in the club. We're working on a set of proposals just now, which we think will do that, and we hope to put them to you for a member vote in the coming weeks. So that probably concludes the formal presentation-y bit of the AGM, and I am going to hand back to George for the Q&A.
Thank you, Colin. And I've just checked the chat and no one seems to have asked a question or PM'd me. But if anyone's got a question, if they can just PM me and I'll ask the questions to whoever it is you want to ask it to. I'll just give you a second there. Well, if anybody's desperate, you can put your hand up in the hand up function and I'll desperately try and find if I can see them. Lawrence McCabe.
Thanks, George. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, Lawrence.
Just wanted to give an update on the carbon footprint objective. Ian McLaren and myself, Ian's also a Smisa member, have been chasing this up with David Riley. So we've actually got a meeting at the stadium on Monday with a view to the club installing waste and recycling bins over the close season. So that carbon footprint objective is now being pushed forward, and the club seems very committed to seeing that as a first step to addressing a lot of other issues. So it's certainly moving. I mean, it was stalled obviously over the last year, but there's certainly positive movement forward on that now.
Okay, thank you, Lawrence. A couple of questions coming in at the moment. Douglas Russell, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, the first I picked up July 27 is going to be the big day. So what kind of events are we going to have to market? COVID sort of restrictions obviously impacting on that. And the second thing was just like last week was all about the European Super League, the fiasco and the greed and lack of fan ownership. So I was wondering how best we could use that to our advantage to improve the membership, I guess.
Colin, do you want to answer that one?
Yes, happy to. Hi Douglas, thanks for your question.
Hi, Colin. Hi.
Event to mark fan ownership, that is in our plan. Obviously that plan has been fairly fluid, so we don't have anything nailed down yet, but our intention is to have some sort of event, hopefully in person. We know that the July the 27th probably coincides with the first game of the season. Obviously we don't yet have the fixture list, so I think what we would maybe hope to do is something, whether it's around the first home game or otherwise, but absolutely it's something we're really keen to do, is to be able to bring people together, and hopefully the situation with the pandemic is at a point where we're able to do that. And we can maybe ask George if we'll have a word with Nicola and see if she can keep the restrictions light enough we're able to get together in some form in July.
I'm just surprised, Colin. I've managed so far. You've mentioned Independence Day, and now you've mentioned the boss, and I'm in the campaign here, trying my best not to mention anything, and you've mentioned it on 2 occasions there. You know, so it's. Yes, we can see what happens. Things seem to be moving in the right direction with regards to people, COVID numbers, and also vaccinations. So it's looking better than what it was. Touch wood, we should be moving in the right direction for being able to get back to unlimited numbers initially for football.
And to answer the second bit of your question, Douglas, I think that's a really good point. I think the events last week just show how far removed from the fans some of the people at the very top end of the game are. And I think it does underline the benefits of fan ownership, that I don't think the people who are running our club are ever going to be too far removed from what the fans think. So I don't know if there's anything explicit really we can say, but I think you're absolutely right. It just underlines why fan ownership is a good thing, and the fans having a voice and being represented on the board is going to be a good thing as well.
Yeah. I think just on what happened in the English Premiership, I think it shows an example of why fan ownership's time has come, because some of these clubs have just completely lost touch with their community and who they serve, and the football community they serve as well. So it's just it just shows you the vast difference, and how they kind of lose so much touch with reality that they actually even lose touch with their own fan base, even at that level as well. So it's but with regards, we've got another question here. It's John Watt. If you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, I think it'll be for the St Mirren directors.
Hi, Georgia. Just curious, it was referenced on a previous slide about an objective, which I presume will be more of a club objective than Smizer, but assisting the club to realise elite status in terms of the academy. So I just wondered, do we know what benefit that brings the academy, and actually do we know what level of expenditure would be required to achieve that?
George,
Yeah.
I'm happy to. Oh,
that's okay, John. Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, it's something we looked at and had actually decided to go ahead with it before the pandemic hit, and it seems like the pandemic is part of every answer to every question here. But the elite status, it allows us to play the youth teams in a higher league, so they're playing against tougher opposition, which helps them improve their abilities, and it actually helps us to recruit the better youngsters, if you like, the ones that are showing promise early on. We do get some cash benefit back, the SFA. We get a payment, and I think off the top of my head it's something like £25,000 from the SFA for achieving elite status. So that does offset the cost of, I think we're only one full-time staff member away from meeting the requirements for elite status. So we have agreed now. We discussed it again at Strategy Day, that is something we are going to achieve this calendar year.
Okay, I've got two questions from, is it Balfi? Two questions. One is probably regarding the chairmanship of the board. So possibly one that might be better for the directors. and the other one's about the football trip. So, Balfour, will you demute yourself, unmute yourself, make yourself known?
Hello, and just trying to find what I'd written. First of all, who's going to take over chairmanship of St Mirren once Gordon Scott departs? Is it a given that the vice chair from Kibble is going to take over?
I think that's probably a better question. Get Colin to answer on Smizer's side, and then get the board members. Get John Needham to answer on the side for the Smizer board member, or the Smizer St Mirren board members.
Okay.
Hi, Barry. How you doing? So, as we previously said, we're going to be taking our board representation from 2 to 4. So we're not in a position to kind of say publicly quite what the plan is there yet, but we hope to in the coming weeks be able to announce it. I'm sorry if that's a bit of a non-answer, but we hoping to get everything confirmed, and then we'll be able to make that public soon. In terms of the chairmanship, that's ultimately a decision for the board, but in relation to your specific point about will it become the vice chair taking over, we have had that's not our expectation. We have had a discussion with Kibble, and our expectation is that the next chair of the club will be a Smizer rep. I can't really say any more than that, I'm afraid.
That's great. The second question that I have is...
excuse me, Alfie, can I just bring in John Needham, just to help give you some more detail to your first question?
Thanks, George. I think, to be honest, Colin's covered it really comprehensively. And you know, the expectation is it will be a Smizer rep going forward. And at the moment, you know, Gordon's doing a really good job, and so there's sort of, until the transaction happens, we can't really make any changes anyway. So it won't be anything that will change in the short term, but I would imagine over time it will change once the board and Gordon feel it's appropriate to make the change.
And Balfour, what's your second question?
The second question is something that I've asked many years at the club AGMs, for the strips to go to fan votes. And really I want to ask whether this initiative will continue in future years, because I think it's a tremendous way for the fans to get engaged in something that ultimately they're the ones that are going to buy.
Well, maybe get David Riley as the club director that was mostly involved with that.
Yeah, that's the plan, Balfour, is going forward. It was very successful, very well received this year. And yeah, you guys are best placed to make the decision. So yeah, I don't see that changing. I'll certainly be pushing, as well John, for that to continue for future seasons.
I have one final question, George, if I didn't manage to write it down for you.
This could be a road question. You're going to hit me with a road question here, Balfour.
Well, it relates to the two arse cheeks, if you don't mind me using that term. But you know, recently they've tried to get Colts into the lower leagues, which seems to me to be a bit of a Trojan horse for when they want to move to another league. And the other issue around them is whether we'll get a chance. First of all, will we get a chance to vote as a membership against or for or against the introduction of Colts? And the second question relates to whether we will get a vote to reclaim the family stand for St Mirren supporters, especially given that we'll become fan owned and we'll have income that may well, you know, that membership are putting towards that could close that financial hole that exists there.
Okay,
I think we'll understand the financials around it, but I think there's a lot of reasons why we want to develop the club and get families back in.
Yeah, I mean, certainly on the family stand side, we've never made any pretense that any of us has been happy with the choices we've had to make there. We would love to be in the position, and I hope we will be in the position where we hand over maybe 200 seats, and that's it. And if we can get the fans back and get the families back, and like I said earlier, in the background, there's a lot of initiatives going on. There's a lot of work going on, and a lot of that is how do we attract more people to matches? What do we need to do to get more families in? All that kind of stuff. So hopefully, when we can get everybody back into the stadium, we're going to see a huge difference. What we're producing on the park is improving and will continue to improve. So if the product on the park is there, then the fans will come through the gates, and it is going to be the case that we won't do that. I mean, you probably understand that we can't leave a stand lying empty, because we're not the size of a club that can afford to lose that kind of money or not have that kind of money, because it does make a difference. It can be, a couple of players, a player and a half a season. But the overall aim is that we are not in that position, that the stand is half full, 3/4 full, and it's all St Mirren fans in, apart from one little corner where we get the one of those team supporters in.
Colin, you get anything to add?
Yeah, I could probably answer your questions on whether the members will be asked to vote. I mean, that is a very good question. I would probably have to say those two specific issues you've mentioned would be treated separately. League reconstruction is one of the issues that's defined as a reserved matter under the shareholders agreement. So what that means is that the board would be required to ask the shareholders, the major shareholders, which will be ourselves and Kibble, to agree a position. So what that basically means is Smizer would actually have a say on how the club voted on any issue of league reconstruction. Further, we would put what we would do with the issue of coach teams. This is one that's been battered around a lot over the years. I think there's not actually been a proposal put to the clubs yet for a vote, as far as I'm aware. John or David will correct me if I'm wrong on that. I think with any issue of that kind, if there was to be, then the board would have to defer it to us, and I suppose we would consider how we would deal with that at that point. Surveying the fans to get their views on the issue would maybe be an issue at that time, depending on the timescales and the level of detail in the issue. There would be a members' vote on away fans getting into the family stand. The answer is probably no, because that is a business decision. So ultimately, we are saying fan-owned is not fan-run. That would be one that the club board would need to make the decision that they believe was right for St Mirren. Now, I know, as David said, it's one that nobody likes. As fans, we don't like it. The board are fans as well. I know that they don't like it. That's a great example of an issue where they would need to take, on one hand, the fans' views, and on the other hand, their understanding of the finances around it, and arrive at the decision that's right for St Mirren. But I don't anticipate, unless the board was to ask the fans to vote on it, that's not one that would automatically go that way.
I think if I could just come back in, Colin, I think one of the things that we need to do better, and we'll make sure we do, is explain the benefits, or explain the club's point ahead of maybe asking fans that. I mean, the Colts one is a good example of that. People might have an opinion on that without knowing, Alan McManus's take on it, if it will bring benefits to the players coming through the academy. So I think what we need to do in those kind of situations is get the information from the stakeholders out to our members before any vote like that takes place, because I'm sure, in amongst some of that, there's a rationale that might change opinion, because everybody wants what's best for the football club, and everybody wants to see the best and most talented young players coming through the academy into the first team. So if something comes up that might help in their development, it might push them that little bit harder, that little bit further, and bring them on that little bit earlier, then that might be enough to maybe sway opinion on it. So I think that's something we need to do in the future, is make sure that kind of information gets out to everyone. And I know club communications have been a sore point for a good few years now, and it is something that we are continually working on Meanwhile, you know, maintaining confidentiality where it's relevant and all the rest of it. We are working on that, and we know we need to get better at it.
Okay, right, thanks for that. If we move on to another question from someone we don't know, David Nichol wants to ask about finances.
Thanks, George. Hello, everybody. Hi, Alan. Question for you, really, I think. It was just to clarify something. You'd mentioned at the point of the takeover, you thought you would have 150,000, 140,000 or something reserve. And Colin, you talked about going forward, putting some, you know, that sort of revenue from the supporters into the club in particular ways to support projects and so on. My question was, what's the kind of baseline rainy day fund or reserve fund you think you're going to work with going forward? You're on mute, Alan.
Yeah, that 140 is a starting figure, and then as Colin indicated, there'll be similar amounts each year, net income, which will be available for distribution. We haven't really agreed a starting a baseline reserve, if you like. We're talking probably at least 250,000, but we're still working on our future finances planning. We hope to be finishing that quite soon and able to make announcements quite soon, but I'd rather not quote any absolute figures tonight. But we're probably talking at least 250,000, possibly more.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I've got a question here from Neil Hayton. He says he can't speak at the moment, but he's asked the question: would it be possible for all Smizer meetings to be posted? I'm assuming that's Smizer board meetings minutes posted online in the closed member section. Alan, could you answer that one with the Very system?
The Very Connect system does have a depository that we can upload documents and videos to. It's not currently active for members, but it could be made active if we felt we wanted to do that. So yes, and that would only be visible to people who log in with their own login details.
And Colin, maybe ask you from a comms perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I guess ideally that is something that we would like to do. I think with everything, there will be times where we'll be discussing things in the meetings that are not necessarily for or at a stage where they can be publicly stated. So we would need to be careful in terms of what was put into the public domain and what wasn't. That's certainly something we would look at. What we would say in the meantime is, if anybody has a question that they want to know about what is being talked about, then we always invite people on every email we send out to contact us directly via the contact@smizer.net email, and we share the work between the committee in terms of going back to people when they do. So we would urge members to get in touch if there's anything that you do want to know.
Okay, we've got what looks like the final question here from Gavin Chittick. If you just want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, good evening. First of all, congratulations to the organisers for putting this on. Much appreciated. My question was that since Smisa will own 51%, Kibble 27%, there'll still be about 20% of the club owned by non-aligned shareholders. Is there any appetite, do you think, for Smisa acquiring more of those shares to take us well clear of the 51%? Is there any benefit to it in any way?
Colin, possibly ask you to answer that.
Hi Gavin, I think the short answer is there's probably not any benefit. I think once we own more than 50, there's nothing really to be gained unless till you own 75, which wouldn't actually be possible now, because the 51 and the 22 wouldn't take you to that. I think, yeah, it's not something we've really looked at, and I guess if we were to be spending money on shares, then I guess that's money that's going into the pockets of individuals rather than perhaps money going into the club. So it probably doesn't perhaps help us in terms of achieving everything that we need to do. As I say, there's probably not a lot of benefit to it. If people were willing to wanted to sell their shares to us, then they can certainly, they're free to get in touch. But I'm not sure that it's something that we would look at doing, if I'm being honest.
Do we have any idea how many other shareholders would there be? I mean, are we talking 10 or 50 or 100?
Of the 22, I believe there are several hundred small shareholders out there. I don't think there's anybody who owns as much as 1%. I think that.
Right. Okay, well that was my main concern, that there wasn't someone with a chunk.
No. I think the way that the mechanics of the last deal worked out in terms of who the previous owners had agreements with, I think the third biggest owner is on something like 0.5%. It's all very small numbers.
Oh, no, in that case, I agree entirely. There's no benefit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can I just, John Needham's want to come in and make a quick pitch for the St Mirren Charitable Trust.
Thanks, George. Hi. So just a wee plug for the upcoming football fans and training programmes that are about to launch at the club. So if you don't know what this is, the St Mirren Charitable Foundation are about to run 2 programmes, one for males, one for females. So it's a 12-week free fitness, health and wellbeing programme. It starts on the 10th of May for the guys and the 12th of May for women. And the objective of it is to help fans tackle things like losing weight, getting a bit fitter, making some friends. You know, a lot of the feedback is that quite a number of guys who've been on it before have made some really good pals on the programme. And also to learn a bit about diet and nutrition for going forward so that they can sustain any benefits they get out of it. So I would stress it's free. It takes place in the stadium, so you get a chance to actually be in the stadium and enjoy hopefully getting a bit fitter and a bit more healthy as you go forward. So if anybody's interested, you'll get it on the St Mirren Charitable Foundation website or Facebook page or Twitter page or whatever. But Gail will be happy to receive any applications. Thank you.
Can I just come in there just a second, John? I was on that just before COVID struck, and it was fantastic. So if any of you are thinking about doing it, definitely go for it. It's really good fun, and it can certainly get you a lot fitter and have a good laugh and meet a lot of good people. So I recommend it thoroughly.
Okay, thank you,
George,
everyone. Thank you for all
George,
your...
there's one question in the chat, I think, that didn't get answered from Ian Jones about the baseline carbon footprint for the club. This is really a first step. You know, there's been a lot of changes. There's not a lot has changed at the club in general, the way the admin side has been, you know, over the years. So we are very much starting out, and we've got LED lights. We've swapped out all the old lights for LED lights in the stadium and all the rest of it. So it is something where some of us are a bit more passionate about than others, but we are moving in that direction. And the work that Lawrence and Ian have taken up to compile a report and send it in to the club, to Tony and David Jameson to look at, this is very much the start of it. So we will be looking at things like solar panels, electric vehicles or charging points for electric vehicles, all that kind of thing. That's definitely the way we're heading. So we're not just sitting back, you know, doing little things like recycling bins and all that kind of stuff. It's very much, as Lawrence said in his previous reply to you, it's very much just the starting point. We are going to take this a lot further forward.
Thank you, David. On that point, I'd just like to thank you all for attending tonight's AGM. Yes, it's been a wee bit different, but as everything else this season, everything's been strange and different. We seem to spend most of our lives looking at small screens all the time, and it seems to you know, we don't interact with one another. Hopefully we're getting to the point where we can actually spend some time in the 1877 club and get together and have a chat and fall out with each other over the football. Or perhaps we've got a team, you know, at this stage in a meeting or EGM or anything, Steve Jobs used to say one more thing and he would bring out the new iPad or something else. Well, our one more thing is effectively July the 27th. July the 27th is our one more thing. With as Colin quite rightly said, within 5 years instead of 10, we've got ourselves to a position where we will be owned. We will be a Premiership club owned by the fans, you know, and that's incredible when you think of it. For a team like St Mirren, for us to get to that position, that's something that we should all pat ourselves in the back for staying the course and working with everyone to make sure we could do that. Because, you know, every other club, as we've said from the start, has started from a bad point, a negative point, where the club's nearly been going out of business. We took over a well-run football club and we continued to make sure it was a well-run football club. We are the template, if there's going to be a template for Scottish football and how fan ownership is going to be. And as I've told you before, I believe fan ownership's time has come. So if this one small thing that one more thing I can leave you with is that we've all done well. So pat yourselves in the back for a job well done. But the hard work starts after July 27th, because we've got to retain it, we've got to keep working hard, and we've got to make sure our football team continues to be successful, because at the end of the day, it's what happens in the park that keeps us all together. So let's go and enjoy the game tonight, and let's hope we get a victory and a chance that's going to Hampden. And maybe I might talk to the boss tonight if we do get through to the final to try and make sure some of you actually get there. So thank you once again and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Cheers, George. Bye.
Thank you.
Come on, the Saints.